Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership Talk Show podcast, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willie. This show is designed to provide an exclusive forum on educational achievement gaps related to learner success while discovering relationships and family issues in diverse settings.
All right, we're back again with the Impact of Educational Leadership, episode 12. I'm your host, ID3, along with Professor Jeff Willie. Tonight we have Diane Birdwell. Tonight we will be discussing, does bullying occur in schools, organizations, group settings, and why? All right, say hello to the people, guys.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. Looking forward to a very, very provocative discussion.
All right, again, so the subject is, does bullying occur in schools, organizations, group settings, and why? For an act to be considered bullying, it must meet certain criteria. This includes hostile intent, imbalance of power, repetition, distress, provocation. Bullying can have a wide spectrum of effects on a student, including anger, depression, stress, and even suicide. Additionally, the bully can develop different social disorders or have a higher chance of engaging in criminal activity. The bully typically uses pressure to make his or her victims conform to their dominant role. There is no universal definition of school bullying. However, it is widely agreed that bullying is an aggressive behavior that reflects and reproduces in the environment, and it does not protect children and adolescents from violence and bullying. Tonight, we brought in Diane Birdwell.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership Talk Show podcast, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willie.
She has been teaching for quite some time. She was born in Waco, Texas, was raised in Dallas. She graduated from one of Texas' largest high schools, Skyline High School. Graduated from college from Texas A&M with a degree in political science. After trying her hand at various jobs, she joined the Army and later became a captain in the reserves. In the year 1999, she decided to change career fields and went into education to teach for the Dallas Independent School District and has been there ever since. She is a powerful youth advocate for equal and positive student treatment across the board. Diane's overall purpose for youth is that she ensures that youth maintain their human rights while aiding in skills such as education, health, housing, employment, relationships, you name it. Diane, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me here tonight.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the first question goes to you. What are some external factors that teachers and managers should be aware of as it pertains to bullying?
Well, some of the factors and clues that it's happening is usually the kids will tell us about it. Since teachers are not on the same social media streams as students, we better not be, we don't often see or hear what they're doing until they clue us in. If it's bullying that's happening on the campus, we may actually witness it. But more often than not, we're made aware of it because someone saw something and they said something. Go ahead.
You know, Diane, you're such a gift to so many, and not just the educational field, but just in the community as a whole. You have been really sought after, and not just in the Dallas ISD, but I know you travel around and you speak and things of that nature. Professor Willie, he also he does some of the same things. Let me tell you a little bit about him. Professor Jeff Willie, he is born from rural East Texas, from a family of 12. Retired Air Force senior leader and classroom instructor. He holds a master's degree in conflict mediation, and he's currently finishing his doctorate in educational leadership. Professor Willie is inspirational, he's motivational, and a visionary, living with a purpose and continual education. He's a lifelong learner. He's also an inspiring author, professor, John Maxwell Team Executive, leadership consultant, coach, disc trainer, and motivational speaker. Professor Jeff Willie, how are you doing today?
I am doing good. Thank you, Isaiah. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for inviting me and allowing me to participate in this very, very needed discussion tonight. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Professor Willie, what are some ways that the impact of educational leadership can have on aggressive behaviors like bullying that can cause emotional and even physical harm?
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership Talk Show podcast, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willie.
Could I, do you mind? Let me follow up with Ms. Birdwell. Diane stated, what kids will tell you, and kids saw something,
Absolutely.
Kids said something. She's absolutely right. So I want to affirm that, and just to follow up with that kids will tell us about it in their because it's hard for children. I think Ms. Birdwell would agree to keep a secret, eventually say something because they know about it. And they saw something, especially when it's off campus or in the neighborhood, and they tend to talk. I remember reflecting back when I was a small kid. It was hard to keep those things to yourself. You might not say it to an adult. You're definitely going to tell another kid that's going to tell another kid, another child, and eventually to get back to an adult or an educator. And it's responsibility, of course, you know that. Once the adult is made aware of it, we have a responsibility to report that immediately. We can't keep that to ourselves. We have to let the authorities be aware, because bullying is a major, major impact. But I want to start what you were saying, the aggressive behavior causes emotional or physical impact. And I want to go this direction on that. I think it's significantly important for us educators, the adults, that we be positive role models for the folks on the campus. So when you see aggressive behavior, you have to respond with that in a very, very positive way. Because you would definitely, if you respond with aggressive behavior in an aggressive way, you adding fuel to the fire. And you want to be able to de-escalate instead of escalating. For those who don't know, I'm a former police officer in the U.S. Air Force and an Arkansas State Police instructor, and I used to train my officers to learn to de-escalate, find a way to stay calm in the midst of the chaos. In a crisis situation, someone has to maintain their cool, and the adult has to be the person in the room to maintain the level-headedness and their cool and calm and being collected, so you can de-escalate that aggressive behavior. And that aggressive behavior, once they recognize that you're not going to rise or lower yourself to that, and most of the time, I can't unequivocally say all of the time, they will eventually start de-escalating. But you got to have a belief, though, in with your words and your actions. And you may be familiar with this, and most of us are familiar with this chant called "Sticks and stones may break my bone, but words will never hurt me." And you've heard that before, and I heard that growing up as a child. But obviously we know that is not true, because those words, what students are using, what the adults are using, cause long-term emotional harm that may significantly impair an individual from reaching his or her full potential. And so bullying definitely would impair a young man or woman emotionally from reaching their full potential. So we have to be very careful, even as adults, when we speak into our youth, that our tone must be in a very caring, monotone, caring way, considering what you're thinking before you speak, and make sure that your words become music to someone's ear, even when you're approaching someone that's aggressive. And I can cite a few examples on my own in responding to an aggressive behavior in the course as even in not only immediate family, but just on the campus itself. When I'm seeing an aggressive behavior, I found a way to neutralize that by smiling, by embracing them in a polite way, and by tapping into what their gifts are. You are a good-looking young man. You are a powerful person. You're very influential. You are very smart. You are intelligent. So I start using those build-up words instead of those tear-down words. And as an educator, we can consider those things before we act and before you approach. Because if you respond negatively, your response back will also be negatively. So recognize that all those young men and women, when they're doing that and when they're aggressive, they're asking for some type of attention, of course. That's what they're looking for. And when these young men and women are bullying, they're asking for help. That's what they're asking for. We're going to respond in a positive way and give them the help they need, the emotional stability, the emotional coaching, lifting them up instead of tearing them down. If you tear them down, then you are definitely going to harm them significantly for the rest of their lives. Hopefully, by the time they get to a certain age, they can rise out of that, but those scars are there. That's why words will hurt you. And be very careful on how we choose our word and how we respond. We must respond in a positive, unconditional, loving way.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership Talk Show podcast, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willie. This show is designed to provide an exclusive forum on educational achievement gaps related to learner success while discovering relationships and family issues in diverse settings.
Professor Willie, I love the insight that you gave us. And I'm going to pull a little bit more from Diane Birdwell, and I want to kind of combine both of you guys' comments together, because you mentioned something about neutralizing aggressive behaviors. Now, I read some articles on you, Diane Birdwell, as it relates to the local news station, and you were in some talks with the school district, and you were representing educators when you spoke up for the local National Education Association chapters. You talked about also strengthening security district-wide, especially with substitutes, because a lot of times subs, they come into a new environment, and if they're not long-term subs, and so they have no clue about the culture of that school and how to communicate these types of issues, these types of behaviors, especially when they are aggressive, because they are, like I said, new to the environment. And so sometimes video cameras are not always on, or they're not always recording, but the outcry still remains. And so how do we now report? How do we report these activities, these behaviors, right? Especially when it comes to cyberbullying. How do we report these behaviors to the right officials? Okay, and because if it were that easy, it would be done. This would not be a topic for tonight. But bullying has been a lifelong, topic. And so, with that being said, Diane Birdwell, like cyberbullying, let's go into that. Cyberbullying is also bullying, and it takes place over digital devices like cell phones, computers, and tablets. Okay, cyberbullying can occur through SMS messages. It can occur through apps, online social media platforms, forums, gaming systems where people can view, participate in, and share content. Okay, so what are your experiences? Give us some examples of one, what to look out for when the kid is too scared or too afraid or frightened to speak out. Just give us some examples that you've seen during your career as a teacher.
All right. Well, I've seen many different kinds. The cyberbullying has been a phenomenon in the last few years as phones have become, ubiquitous, in our society. Every kid has one. Everyone has a smartphone with a camera on it, etc. And sometimes kids have reported and shown me things where they're being threatened on Facebook or Instagram. And once we're made aware of that, we have to report it. That's just the law in Texas. That's policy in DISD. And frankly, it's the human thing to do. The kids are reaching out to us. We must respond. The second kind that I've seen is where they will send messages to each other to go do something in person with the kids. So sometimes it's being used as a gathering mechanism. At lunch we're going to go get this guy and we're going to bully him in the bathroom, or we're going to get this girl and we're going to throw milk on her head at lunch, that kind of thing. A third one is a little more dark. A lot of kids don't have the maturity on dealing with sexual matters, but they're participating in sexual activity. And a lot of times we have kids who will send explicit pictures of themselves to someone they care about, and then that person will then forward it to other people. Hey, look what I've got. And then the bullying starts from them, the mocking, the teasing, and the sharing. And I've actually dealt with that in the district where some kids have made this horrible mistake of sending pictures of themselves to someone they thought they could trust, and obviously they could not. And, the saying is true. Once it's on the internet, it's there forever. So we have to look at threats. We have to look at intimidation, but we also have to look at shame and humiliation. That's a part of bullying, too. So the professor might want to comment on that.
Yes, very, very, very good. Thank you for bringing it out in regards. One of the key components that I picked up is that sometimes we use those messages for gatherings, and I have witnessed that as well. And I've also witnessed the photos, sharing a photo with someone that you trusted or you thought you trusted, that was your friend, and of course they share with others. And then the bullying and the taunting starts after that, even during school as well as after school. And what you have said, Ms. Burkwell, is that once we know about it as the adult, as the educator, we must report that immediately. And the reason I say that, because I have watched several educators lose their jobs by not reporting it in a timely manner. And that got reported to the law enforcement authorities before the schools were taking action. And so once the law enforcement authority received that, and the school was asked, why haven't you taken action on this? And of course they delayed it, and they was protecting folks. And I watched educators lose their jobs in the last several years. I won't mention any particular school district, but several educators have lost their jobs, administrators, coaches, counselors, and teachers, because of lack of reporting in a timely manner. When something was shared and when it was found out, the parent knew about it before the school was taking action, and then the parent reported it to the school. Why haven't the education system has taken action? And it's absolutely right. That is very, very important. I can't stress that more. Educators, once you know about it, it's best to report immediately and deal with the fallout, but report, because if you don't report, the fallout is extremely worse. That's been my experience just by watching some people that I know personally have lost their jobs because of lack of reporting.
This is a powerful, powerful discussion. Those of you that are listening in. And so with that, we're going to give you some ways. We're going to give you some ways to report bullying.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership Talk Show podcast, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willie.
Okay. And so let me ask this question. Hey, either one of you can jump in at any time. So how do you report bullying? Give us some ways to report bullying. Whoever wants to go first.
I'll go ahead. If the student trusts an adult in the building, anyone, even a custodian or the kitchen ladies, as we call them, any adult in the building that is involved in education in a setting can then send it to the counselor and to the principal, because it's not child abuse. We don't report it to CPS, but bullying does have to be addressed, and we even have a form, a protocol for filling it out, and we have yearly training. We just had our training this week in DISD and across the state on how to take care of that. Professor?
You're absolutely correct. The adults, and we must, all the adults on campus, to include bus drivers, they are trained on dealing with bullying, anything that comes forth with them. If that adult is being trusted, adult, please step up and report that immediately, because that young lady, that young man is trusting you. They're asking for your help. They're asking for your assistance. You're absolutely correct. Bus drivers, custodial staff, lawn keepers, anyone that's in the business of educating our youth, they're responsible for reporting, and they must go through training. When we have those youth camps, working with youth in the summertime and church camps, they go through the exact same training. It's required in the state of Texas that anyone that's working with youth must attend sexual harassment, child abuse reporting, bullying, and anything that works with our youth, because of our current state of affairs in our country right now and in our state. We must take the appropriate action immediately to protect our future leaders.
Exactly. And one further thing, if we don't take responsibility and act on it, it can have tragic results. We had an incident about 15 years ago on my campus where a girl was being bullied by a gang of girls. And we knew they were going to jump her at the rec center down the road, and we notified the Dallas police because we didn't have DISD police then. And they were literally lying in wait inside the building, waiting to catch these girls, go after her, because we could never catch it. Unfortunately, somehow they figured that out, and they tried to jump her at the very last minute at the end of school day. But she was ready for them. She had a box cutter, and she slashed the face, both cheeks, of the lead girl of the gang that was harassing and bullying her. And she ended up, the victim of bullying, ended up being arrested for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon as a juvenile, and ended up in juvenile justice. And the girl who was doing the bullying ended up with a scarred face. She was cut down to the bone on both cheeks. So it was a tragedy for everyone. It was a miracle she wasn't killed, but it was also a miracle that the other girl wasn't accused of it, for murder. So we have to intervene before someone decides to take their own form of justice or retaliation. We see this with shootings, these mass shootings. A lot of these kids were bullied or imagined they were bullied, and they want to strike out. So we're saving lives when we stop the bullying. Professor, you agree?
I totally agree. We are saving lives. And what's so ironic about this, the adult, everyone on the campus that's around our youth must be sensitive, must continue to listen to what the youth are saying. Don't take it as a joke. Don't respond jokingly. Don't take it for granted. React on it very quickly. And if you hear someone saying something aggressively about hurting another youth, another child, if you hear that as an adult, you must step in and intervene immediately. If you need to report it, I'd much rather for you to overreact and not react. The overreaction may save someone's life. Not reacting could cost someone their life, or a child to be hurt and harmed significantly forever.
Okay, guys, now I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit and try to make it a little bit more challenging, because this is so powerful and it's so impactful. I don't want to just stop with children. What about in the workplace?
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership Talk Show podcast, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willie.
What are some things that you're seeing, especially when you're talking about new people on the job, new teachers coming in, okay? There are new teachers coming in. There is a possibility that some of them may be bullied. What are some of the things that you guys have seen as it relates to bullying in the office place?
Professor, you want to go first?
I would love to go first. Thank you so much for relenting on that. And we use a term now, especially in the HR world, we call hostile working environment. That seems to be the quote-unquote word. What it equates to, though, is bullying. Someone is being aggressive, has an aggressive behavior toward another person. And what I've witnessed in some campuses and in some workplace, the adult bullying is the leader primarily becomes the aggressor, and the subordinate is the aggressee, is the person that's being bullied. I've watched that happen in certain organizations where that primary leader is uncomfortable in his or her skin, and for him to feel that they are in charge, to have authority, they become very hostile and aggressive. And that is a form of bullying, because you are trying to force your way and force your will on a coworker or a subordinate. That is a form of bullying. Sometimes it's not reported as bullying because it's just reported as a hostile working environment, and of course grievance are filed. But in the essence of that is forcing your will on someone else. That's what you're doing, and that is a form of bullying. Anytime you're trying to force your will towards someone else and trying to get them to do something that they don't desire to do, and you have an aggressive behavior towards someone, that is a form of bullying. And we don't hear it so much in a workplace. We hear the hostile working environment. It could be an employee towards another employee. I want to force my will. I want to force my authority. I want to be the dominant force. And that person, if that person do a serious reflection on the way they was raised, that aggressive behavior has been part of their life for many years. And it is time for them to step back and see what's causing them. You will find out they are isolated. They have very little relationship with their co-workers or their employees or other leaders in the organization because of their behavior. They have an aggressive style behavior, and that is a significant form of bullying. We have to watch that, the tone and how they relate to one another, the tone that when you're talking to your subordinates, the tone when you're talking to your co-workers, because you have that mindset of aggressive behavior. And most likely, you probably have been bullied at some time in your life, and because you never dealt with that and overcame that, and now you become the aggressor, because most bullies primarily have been bullied. And that's part of the things I observed in the workplace.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership Talk Show podcast, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willie.
That's true. I experienced it myself when I was a soldier. I mean, I may have been an officer, a lieutenant at the time, and yet there were men who made a point for sexual harassment or career harassment or hostile work environment, and I reacted in different ways. I handled it, myself without even having to go to the IG, the Inspector General, but it's a very prevalent and common thing to hear about now with the Me Too movement. But bullying sexually is sexual harassment. Hostile work environment is also there. I've seen it in the education setting in DFC as a union representative and even vice president of NEA Dallas at one time. We get many cases of it. Sometimes it's a little unclear what's going on, but most of the time it's quite clear that they will do what we call paper bullying or paperworking someone to try and drive them out, especially older teachers. For a long time in DISD, if you were an older veteran teacher, you cost the district more money and they wanted to bring in younger, they would basically have a hostile work environment for you. And so we've been pushing back on that. You also have leaders, administrators in any workplace who, as the professor said, they grew up in a certain mindset and they may have a racial bias. We call it racism, but basically it's racial bullying. You may have someone with a religious bias or an anti-LGBTQ bias. That's been a problem in many places. And I want to cheer DISD for being way ahead of the game on not tolerating anti-gay or anti-homosexual behavior. They will fire someone for making that a hostile work environment. And so we make it safe for the teachers and the students who come out to us as gay. And so that's, it's an epidemic in society, and the military and the education setting are just two symptoms, where people, we get together and you're going to find that. And the professor, I'm sure, saw it in the Air Force, and he saw it in law enforcement. And, you'll see it in a radio station. You'll see it at a grocery store. So we have to have an environment where people realize treating each other more kindly and more openly and with empathy. That's a big thing. And so one of the ways DISD is dealing with this now is called social emotional learning, or SEL, where we try to get the kids to calm down and reflect on their behavior. And same thing with teachers, but try and get people to think before they act, learn how to, it's not just the situation there, but how they react to it that gives them the outcome that they end up with. So as a society, we need to awaken to how we can make it better for everyone.
Totally agree. And I have watched certain leaders, sexual harassment, didn't have a lot of respect for women in the workplace, and so they have used their authority to force their will on certain people, and not necessarily towards sexual harassment, but just being overly aggressive towards the females in the organization, because they were uncomfortable and they may have some problems with relationships with their mother or significant women in their lives growing up, and now they're in a leadership role in the organization, and they're in a position where they can force their will and be aggressive towards the opposite sex because their relationship with the opposite sex when they was growing up. And as we try to focus, I know counseling is part of it, but counseling primarily focuses on folks' weaknesses. If we can get folks to enhance the greatness in them and focuses on their strengths, those strengths, and that's positive things about men and women. If you get both people working on those and enhancing those weaknesses not necessarily won't go away. They just won't be highlighted, because the love, the kindness, the caring, the relationship would be the primary focus of being bridge building and bringing people together.
That brings me to my next point. And whoever wants to go first, they can. It doesn't matter. This is a powerful discussion. This is also a serious discussion. Someone is going to learn a great deal about these behaviors because of this discussion tonight, because of this podcast tonight. So I want to thank you for this and information. And with that being said, what's a way, how can we identify the patterns of bullying in the beginning? So, because some people are being bullied right now, kids and adults, and don't even know it until it's too late. So give us some ways to identify. I know you talked a great deal about what you've seen and some of the precursors on how you've seen them start off, but give us some real-world examples of, okay, if this is happening, you're probably being bullied right now.
Well, it's not a matter of just not getting along with them. There's always going to be a coworker who's not going to like me or my personality, or I'm not going to be agreeable to theirs. We get on each other's nerves. That's not bullying. And if there's, like if I don't like you, Mr. Dillon, it's like, oh God, I have to have another meeting with them. Okay, just get through it. But when it's bullying, you actually feel it. It actually has physical manifestations of an upset stomach or a nervous headache or jitteriness or emotional outburst, because your body is telling you that you're in a bad place. It's our ancient fight or flight syndrome. And when you're being bullied, you feel, whether you realize it or not, subconsciously, you're under attack and you're being threatened. So your body will often tell you that there's a reason why you don't like being around that woman or that man. And so you have to kind of learn to listen to it. Parents have to learn to listen to their kids, and one of the problems is they're not as together as they used to be. They eat separately, they don't have meals together, they don't ask how their day was. Most of my teenagers' parents kind of leave them be, as we used to say in the evenings, unlike when they were little. And that way they don't really know what's going on in their life. We've had students who have attempted suicide, and the parents were totally blindsided by it because they had no idea their children were being bullied. They had no idea their children were in pain because there was no communication, there was no awareness, and luckily, didn't finish their attempt, thank God. But other students I have lost to suicide over the years. And it's a very painful thing. It's a very aware, sad thing for a lot of kids that they realize suddenly, oh my God, there are consequences to this behavior. Professor?
Totally agree. What you said, Ms. Birdwell, is that the fact there's that family unit in how we are, video games, not paying attention, not listening. Sometimes the teenager becomes the adult in the house because mom and dad is out working at nighttime or different. I've watched that happen as well. There's no connection, no communications, and I've watched parents sit right next to their children and not talk to their children, but would text their child, or the child would text the mom or text the parents, and not have that personal interaction, not sitting around. All those different dynamics, which is I call the breaking up of the family. The nucleus of the family could be in the home, but not be a family. They can be in the same household, but not have a relationship. And without the relationship, there's no communication. There's no asking questions, how was your day? If there's an open dialogue, the son or daughter walks in the house and starts sharing their day, because that family foundation is about communications and sharing, and that son or daughter feels very comfortable sharing their day with their mom and dad based on that initial relationship and nurturing relationship as that child was growing up. And that doesn't exist, and then that son or daughter goes into a cocoon and stay in that shell and go straight to their room when they come home and don't come out until it's time to go to school the next day. And as you stated, things happen. Child being bullied, they're not sharing it with mom and dad, and they have suicide ideations or attempt suicide, and there's a major shocker, and the parents start questioning themselves. And yes, there's a moment of reflection because the problem lies within that nucleus of the home. And somehow, hopefully we can communicate to our parents that you are a major part. You are, as a parent, you are not your child's friend. You can't have a very, very cordial and professional and personal relationship, but you got to nurture and listen and talk. Listen, and not primarily always talking, but just listening, and have a culture and an atmosphere where a son or daughter can talk to their parents, because they will share if you give them an opportunity, but they got to know that you have a heart of listening.
Well, all right. Well, we're out of time. With that being said, give us a takeaway from tonight's discussion. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I really enjoyed discussing this with these gentlemen, and I hope the community that hears this podcast will reach out to people of all ages, not just young people, but of all ages, and see and notice and learn when people are in pain and suffering. And, reach out to their religious community, reach out to their social community and their network, their medical doctors, anybody for help.
Totally agree, and that this conversation needs to continue in a very, very positive way. Open up our ears, listen, and listen with our heart. Folks, the students are giving us messages. We just need to be in tune to those messages and respond to those messages and let people know that we care. But Madeline Hunter, kids don't care what you know until they know that you care.
All right, well, thank you for tuning in for another Impact of Education Leadership, episode 12. Good night.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership Talk Show podcast, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willey. This show is designed to provide an exclusive forum on educational achievement gaps related to learner success while discovering relationships and family issues in diverse settings.